Latin America has produced some great fighters and numerous world champions, both amateur and professional. Fighters like Jose Napales, Kid Gavilan, and Kid Chocolate from Cuba, Francisco Rodriguez and Edwin Valero from Venezuela, Joan Guzman and Carlos Cruz from the Dominican Republic. Can't forget Carlos Monzon, Nicolino Loche, and Sergio Martinez from Argentina, and Antonio Cervantes, Rodrigo Valdez, and Edison Miranda from Colombia, to name a few. But Mexico and Puerto Rico has produced some of the greatest pugilists the sport has ever seen, and arguably also produced the greatest nationalistic rivalry in boxing history. In this video, we are going to highlight the origins of this heated rivalry and discuss some of the greatest championship fights between warriors of these two nations. But first, let me ask you to jab that like button, lead hook that share button, uppercut that subscribe button, and throw a combination at the notification bell so you can stay updated when we drop new content.
¡Viva México, cabrones!
Mexico, and its population of 130 million people, has been one of the world's greatest contributors to the sport of boxing. Mexico has undoubtedly given us some of the greatest fight legends in history. And for generations, Mexican fighters have been some of the most popular boxers, toughest fighters, and greatest champions. And with fighters like Oscar De La Hoya and Canelo Alvarez, even became the quote-unquote face of the sport. Mexico produced champions and Hall of Fame legends like Julio Cesar Chavez Sr., who has a record of 107 wins to 6 losses, with 2 draws, 85 of those wins coming by knockout. Ruben Olivares, with a record of 89 wins and 13 losses with 3 draws, 79 wins coming by way of knockout. El Puas is regarded as one of the greatest bantamweights of all time. Carlos Zarate, and his record of 66-4 with 63 knockouts. Zarate is considered one of the hardest punchers in boxing history and won 55 straight fights before his first loss. You can't mention Mexican fighters without mentioning the great fighters like Juan Manuel Marquez, Ricardo Lopez, Eric El Terrible Morales, and the babyface assassin himself, Marco Antonio Barrera, and you definitely cannot leave out arguably Mexico's greatest fighter ever, and one of the greatest featherweight champions of all time, Salvador Sanchez, with his record of 44-1 with 1 draw and 32 wins by knockout. Puerto Rico, with a population of only 3.2 million people, is a small but beautiful island in the Caribbean. Puerto Rico has produced its own share of legends, tough fighters, and great champions and Hall of Famers. Such fighters as Edwin Chapo Rosario, with a career record of 47-6 with 41 knockouts. Rosario was a 3-time lightweight champion. Wilfredo Vasquez, with a record of 56-9 with 2 draws, 41 wins by way of knockout. He won titles in 3 weight classes: bantamweight, super bantamweight, and featherweight. Also the great former light heavyweight champion Jose Torres. Torres had a record of 41-3-1 with 21 knockouts. But you can't mention great legendary Puerto Rican fighters without mentioning Miguel Cotto, with a record of 41-6 with 33 knockouts. And one of my all-time favorite fighters, Felix Tito Trinidad, with his record of 42-3 with 35 knockouts, capturing titles in 3 weight classes. Wilfredo El Radar Benitez, with an amazing record of 53-8-1 with 31 knockouts. Benitez was the youngest fighter to ever win a world title when he defeated Antonio Cervantes when he was only 17 years old. And definitely, we can't leave out arguably the greatest Puerto Rican pugilist ever, Wilfredo Bazooka Gomez. His record of 44-3-1 with 42 wins coming by way of knockout. He's regarded as one of the greatest super bantamweights of all time and one of the top knockout artists in history. The first championship bout on record between a Mexican and Puerto Rican took place on June 26, 1934 at the Forum in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Sixto Escobar of Puerto Rico with a record of 21-8-2, and Rodolfo Shango Casanova of Mexico, who had a record of 29-3, fought for the world bantamweight title. Escobar dominated the fight and finished Casanova in the 9th round to become the first Puerto Rican bantamweight world champion in history. Escobar, also known as El Gallito or the Rooster, finished his career with a record of 39, 23, and 4 with 17 KOs. Escobar vs. Casanova might have been the first championship fight between boxers from these two Latin nations, but some will say the rivalry really began 47 years later when two of the greatest warriors from both countries fought for the WBC featherweight world title on August 21st, 1981 at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas. The 2-1 favorite, Wilfredo Gomez, who had a record of 32-0-1, moved up from junior featherweight to challenge the 40-1-1 Salvador Sanchez. Sanchez, who was popular in this country of Mexico, was facing Gomez, who was an even bigger star in Puerto Rico, in a title bout that was dubbed by promoter Don King as the Battle of the Little Giant. The event was an epic display of Latin pride. The crowd waved their nation's flags proudly while Gomez entered the ring to the Apollo Sound, a salsa band he'd flown in from Puerto Rico, and Sanchez entered the squared circle to the sound of Mexican mariachi. Even the legendary and at the time junior middleweight champion Wilfred Benitez was in attendance for this historic event. In round 1, Chava dropped Gomez. Gomez, whose eye became badly damaged throughout the course of the fight, was eventually stopped by the featherweight champ in the 8th round, in what would go down as an all-time classic. Salvador Sanchez of Mexico will be victorious in the battle between the Little Giant. After Gomez's loss to Sanchez, he would go on to fight the 49-5-1 Guadalupe, or simply Lupe Pintor, from Mexico. Gomez went back down to super bantamweight and Pintor moved up a division to fight for the WBC World Championship. The fight took place on December 3, 1982 at the Superdome in New Orleans. It was a back and forth war, and arguably the greatest Mexico vs. Puerto Rico grudge match to this day. Gomez would eventually drop and finish Pintor in the 14th round, regaining his WBC belt. When the Mexican and Puerto Rican squared off, it was already proven to be fireworks. And when Puerto Rico's Edwin Rosario faced off for the second time against Mexico's Jose Luis Ramirez, it wouldn't be anything different. It was 1984's Fight of the Year. Ramirez would be victorious after weathering the storm that was Rosario, then knocking Rosario out brutally in the 4th round. On December 12, 2000, Puerto Rican superstar boxer, the undefeated 38-0 Felix Tito Trinidad, who was fresh off of victories over the Golden Boy Oscar De La Hoya and David Reed, would now face the up-and-coming Mexican superstar, the 20-0 former Olympian, ferocious Fernando Vargas, at the Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas. This will be another high-profile Mexican vs. Puerto Rican matchup with the IBF Super Welterweight title on the line. Trinidad would drop Vargas twice in the 1st round. Vargas would return the favor by dropping Tito on his back pockets in the 4th round. Ultimately, Trinidad would stop the Mexican Vargas in the 12th, dropping him 3 times to finish him off in what became a classic.
He's a veteran. And that'll do it. The 3rd right hand, the 3rd knockdown of the round. A huge victory for Tito Trinidad. He closes the show like the champion he is.
These are just a few of the many classic fights between pugilists from these two Latin American countries. Mexico and Puerto Rico are two proud nations with prideful people, and fighters these countries have produced step inside the ring with that same fire and pride, showing heart, grit, and a desire to win. Other notable fights in this rivalry are Julio Cesar Chavez versus Edwin Rosario, Felix Trinidad versus Yuri Boy Campa, Orlando Salido versus Juan Manuel Lopez, Giovanni Seguro versus Ivan Calderon 1, Wilfredo Gomez versus Carlos Zarate, and Jorge Arce versus Wilfredo Vasquez Jr. Mexican and Puerto Rican fighters have given us many classic fights and a long list of great champions, and by far the best nationalistic rivalry in the sport of boxing. Before I go, let me ask you to jab that like button, lead hook that share button, uppercut that subscribe button, and throw a combination at the notification bell so you can stay updated when we drop new content. I want to thank you for watching Mexico versus Puerto Rico, boxing's greatest rivalry. This is the Parry, where we don't pull or duck no punches, and the parry is fundamental to boxing. Until next time, we out. Peace.
Actually, now we're going to show you how to catch the jab. Actually, in boxing, it's called parrying.